Give us property among our father's relatives. So Moses brought their case before the Lord, and the Lord said to him, what Zelophehad's daughters are saying is right. You must certainly give them property as an inheritance among their father's relatives and turn their father's inheritance over to them. Say to the Israelites, if a man dies and leaves no son, turn his inheritance over to his daughter. If he has no daughter, give his inheritance to his brothers. If he has no brothers, give his inheritance to his father's brothers. If his father had no brothers, give his inheritance to the nearest relative in his clan, that he may possess it. This is to be a legal requirement for the Israelites as the Lord commanded Moses. I am praying that the Lord Almighty will grant all of us the understanding of his word tonight in the name of our Lord Jesus. Don't forget what I said that the topic will be. I said that the topic is destiny fulfillment against all odds. Destiny fulfillment against all odds. I say again, destiny fulfillment against all odds. And if I'm going to ask us these rhetorical questions, I will say, how many of us are willing to fulfill destiny? I believe asking an individual this kind of a question, all of us want to raise up our hands, that we want to fulfill destiny. And going to the second question, which I consider to be my entry question. How many of us are working towards destiny fulfillment? All of us, we want to fulfill destiny. But how many of us are really working towards destiny fulfillment? People of God, if we are going to fulfill destiny, if we are going to be what the Lord Almighty has destined us to be, if we will not be duplicate, if we will be original, and we will act originality, I want to tell us that the power of the will is needed. Power of the will is needed for destiny fulfillment. It means that I must be willing to fulfill destiny. I must be willing to be what the Lord Almighty wants me to be. I must cooperate with the Lord Almighty. I must do everything within my own power to be what the Lord Almighty wants us to be. In this topic, destiny fulfillment against all odds, I see two things there. Number one, destiny fulfillment. If we are going to have a grasp, if we are going to have a good understanding, a better understanding of this topic, we must know what destiny fulfillment is. And the second thing we must know is all us. when we are talking of destiny fulfillment, it is the same as achieving maximum potential in life. Willingness to achieve maximum potential in life. Number 2, destiny fulfillment is the same as fulfilling purpose for existence. Purpose for existence of A may not be the same as B. But I want to assure you tonight that there is no one created by God that the Lord Almighty doesn't have purpose for. You were created to fulfill a purpose. When we are talking of destiny fulfillment, it's the same as being singled out for excellence. You have a role to play in this world. You have a role to play in your family. You have a role to play in the church where you are a member. If I'm going to fulfill destiny in the local assembly where I am a member, I must work towards my preaching ability. I am not called to be a singer. Those called into singing ministry, they must work it out. They must put in extra effort. Those into teaching ministry, they must put in extra effort if they are going to fulfill destiny in that local assembly. As a father that will fulfill destiny in the home front, I must know my roles and I must work towards the achievements of those roles. And the second thing, in the topic we are sharing, destiny fulfillment against all odds. When we are talking about the expression all odds, it is the same as all possibilities. It means that I must fulfill destiny against all possibilities. Possibility of not fulfilling destiny. Possibility of being trampled upon. Possibility of being caged. So I must fulfill destiny against all possibilities. Against all likelihood. Against all chances. I must fulfill destiny. Destiny fulfillment against all odds. Fulfilling destiny against all odds simply means that there are destiny destroyers along the way of fulfilling destiny, but one must rise above them. People of God, for the church today, what wants to prevent the church from fulfilling destiny is this COVID-19. The church ought to reach out to the world. The church ought to encourage members. The church ought to assemble, possibly weekly, possibly during the week like we are doing today. But COVID-19 doesn't want the church to assemble. Despite that odd, despite the possibility of not coming together, we must still fulfill destiny. The fact that a challenge comes your way shouldn't be a yardstick for you not to fulfill destiny. People of God, there are destiny destroyers along the way of fulfilling destiny, but one must rise above them. fulfillment of destiny against all odds simply means one achieves maximum potentials, negative situations and circumstances notwithstanding. Negative winds we blow, but we are expected to soar like eagles in those negative winds. A person that will feel destiny must be ready to soar against the possibility of negative winds. Negative wind of hunger, negative wind of joblessness, negative wind of atheism, negative wind of sin, negative wind of disappointment. One must rise above those challenges. For our study today, the focus is the way the 5 women in the book of Numbers rose above negative winds in order to fulfill destiny. We have 5 young women in the passage we read a while ago, the book of Numbers, chapter 27, from verse 1 to 11. And we see that these 5 individuals fulfill destiny against all odds, against challenges, against possibilities, against chances. They fulfilled destiny. People of God, what were the challenges that these ones were familiar with? They were familiar with the history of their life and lineage. They were familiar with what was in operation. They were familiar with challenges that every Israelite will face, if not a woman, if not a man, if not a teenager, if not an adult. They were familiar with all these challenges. They were familiar with the challenges that their parents encountered. They were familiar with the history of what happened in the land of Egypt. They were familiar with what happened in the desert. They were familiar with what happened at Kadesh Barnea. They were familiar with all this. They were familiar with how some people died in the wilderness. And they were familiar with the surviving strategies in the wilderness. And I want to tell us, people of God, that these 5 women did not claim perfection of their family line. No. They knew that their family line was not perfect, despite the fact that they were descendants of the son of Joseph. Despite the fact that they were blessed by Jacob when he was blessing the 12 children he had. These people, these 5 daughters, they knew their rights and privileges before God among the people of God. Hence, they demanded for it. People of God, do you know your right before God? Do you know what heaven has said about your life? Do you know what God is saying about your existence? These 5 daughters, they had the full understanding of everything that was related to their lives. And these ones, one thing that is fascinating to me is that they didn't allow gender to deter them from achieving greatness in life. Being women ought to deter them. Being women ought to cage them. Being women ought to limit them. But these ones refused to allow gender to deter them from achieving greatness in life. They believe that there is gender equality before the Lord Almighty. They believed that it is only man, it is only human beings that will say, this is a man, this is a woman. But before the Lord Almighty, we are equal. Our study tonight is about the Zelophehad's daughters that we read about. And I see three major things in view of this passage. The fourth one, by His grace, I'm going to use it as a conclusion. By His grace, I may not allow questions in between the teaching, but after I'm through with the teaching, if anybody has any question from whom, I will allow such a person to ask. Anybody online that want to ask a question, or we want clarifications on the teaching of today, I will allow us to ask our questions. The first thing I see is in verse 1a. The second thing I see is from verse 1b to verse 4. The third thing I see is from verse 5 to verse 7. And the last thing I see is from verse 8 to verse 11. We are going to start from verse 1. The first aspect of verse 1. I can see that fulfillment of destiny requires the knowledge of the past. If you are going to fulfill destiny, either at your own front, you must have the knowledge of the past. If you are going to fulfill destiny in your church, you must have the knowledge of the past. If you are going to fulfill destiny in your nation, you must have the knowledge of the past. One historian said, not to know what happened before you were born is to forever remain a child. If you are the type, you don't know what happened before you were born in your family, you are still a child. Though. If you join a church, you don't verify to know the antecedents of that church. In that church, even if you are 60 years old, you are still a child. You remain a child. You don't know the history of your nation, you remain a child. I could see that these 5 women, these 5 young women wanted to fulfill destiny. Hence, they had the knowledge of the past. Look at verse 1a. The scripture says, the daughters of Zelophehad, son of Epha, the son of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, belonged to the clans of Manasseh, son of Joseph. Look at the way the history is relayed from one generation to the other, from one father to the other. These 5 women, they knew their identity with Joseph. These 5 women, they knew their affiliation with Joseph. And don't forget, Joseph received father blessing from the father. Joseph received father blessing from Jacob. And the children of Manasseh, or Manasseh himself, received father blessing, papa's blessing, which was fatherly expressed from Jacob. These 5 young women knew this fact. The women knew their identity as women and the limitations attached to it. It is just like the African culture where women are not valued. These 5 women too, they knew that the culture in Palestine didn't value women. The culture in Palestine valued men far above women. These people, they had that understanding. But one thing that is fascinating to me, and that thing changed their history, is the fact that the women saw ability in their disability. Thank God for today. We have many women occupying men's position in our culture today. We have many women professors. We have many women that are medical doctors. We have many women. We have and these women, they took proactive steps in the right direction. If we look at that verse 1, being women wanted to stand against them. Being women wanted to be a disadvantage towards being achievers. But these women, they decided to stand against all odds. And they believe in the slogan that what men can do, women can do better. And they showed through their usefulness. They showed through their seriousness. They showed through their actions. That is the first thing I see in view of verse 1. Fulfilling destiny requires that you know history. Requires that you know the antecedents of your lineage. You know the antecedents in the church where you have your membership. You know the antecedents in your tribe if you want to fulfill destiny. Number 2, if we look at verse 1b to verse 4, we will see 5 points that prompted these 5 young women towards fulfilling destiny. Therefore, if we are going to fulfill destiny, it is not only in the theoretical framework. It is not only in the knowledge of history. It requires that you take some bold steps if you are going to fulfill destiny. If you are going to fulfill destiny, you must act your faith. You believe God can do this? God is expecting that you put your faith into action. These women, they were determined to fulfill destiny. And they put their faith into action in 5 ways. Let's look at verse 1b to verse 4. Number 1, in verse 1b, the scripture says, the names. Look at verse 1b. It says, the names of the daughters were Mala, Noah, Hogla, Milcah, and Taza. Look at what follows. They approached the entrance to the tent. Number 1, approach. They did not just fold their hands somewhere and be watching. They were not saying that, at least in as much as I know history, that is the end. No. It is just like somebody looking for job, paid job. The person is just praying. The person doesn't go out. The person didn't even write any application for job. Whether one likes it or not, the person, it is hunger that will kill the person. And don't forget what the scripture says. It says, watch and pray. The Bible is not saying that we should only watch and just jettison prayer. And the Bible is not saying that we should only pray and jettison watching. But the Bible brings the two together. Where I believe these ones were praying is the first aspect, knowing the history. Having the understanding of the past. Having the understanding of their genealogy. Having the understanding of what happened to their lineage. And in this second instance, they decided to bring what they knew into practical sense, practical demonstration. And the scripture says they approached the tent, the entrance to the tent of meeting. That was the first thing. They did not stay at that platform. They went into the second aspect. They climbed the first rung of the ladder, and they went on to climb the second one. Some people, after they have taken the first step, they will get tired. Some people, after they are turned down, maybe at the instance of taking the first step, they will just be tired with the entire thing. These ones were not tired. And don't forget, approaching the elders takes courage. Approaching a person like Moses takes courage. Approaching people that were called religious leaders, people that were once bosses, takes courage. These ones were courageous enough to go to the tent of meeting. And the second thing they did, the scripture says, when they got to the tent of meeting, they stood before Moses. And in my Bible, I marked the word stood. These ones decided to stand. Yes, we have come, though you didn't send for us. We have come. Take notice of us. We have come uninvited, and we have a case to settle. And if you look at verse 2b to verse 3, you will see the third point there. The first one, they approached the entrance to the tent of meeting. The second one, they stood before Moses, before Eleazar the priest, before the leaders and the whole assembly. And they didn't stop at that. They went ahead to speak out. Some people, when they get to the house of prayer, they are distracted. When these people got to their own house of prayer, they were not even distracted. They were not merry-go-rounding. They were not like their fathers who were sent to go and spy, to know how the land was. And they majored in the minor. This one didn't major in the minor. They knew the business that brought them before Moses. They knew the business that brought them before Eleazar, the priest. They knew the business that brought them before elders. And they spoke it out. When you get to the house of prayer, when you get to your own time of prayer, when you are petitioning God, when you are interceding, are you mindful of what you say before the Lord? Do you at all take note of what brought you before the Lord Almighty? These ones, they were mindful of what brought them before the Lord. And the scripture says, they said, look at verse 3. They said 4 things. And I'm amazed at those 4 things. They said 4 things. They did not hide. They spoke out. Number 1, they said, our father died in the desert. They didn't hide. They didn't say that they were right. The descendants were right, whereas they were not right. Mm-hmm. They didn't say that their fathers were Christians, whereas they were idol worshippers. They didn't say that. And they went on. They said, he was not among Korah's followers who banded together. Listen to me, Mr. Moses. Mr. Eleazar, the priest, you must listen to me. Our father wasn't a coup plotter. Our father wasn't a saboteur, a person who will sabotage the efforts of the leaders. No. Our fathers were not involved in that. They said, our father died in the desert. And number 2, he was not among Korah's followers who banded together against the Lord. People of God, when you are fighting your pastor, you are fighting God. When you are fighting your leader innocently, the leader that is innocent, you are fighting God. You don't know. Look at the way it is presented here. It was Moses that Korah, Dathan, and Abiram fought. But here, these 5 women, they said, our father was not among Korah's followers who banded together against the Lord. And look at the 3rd thing said. This woman said, our father died for his own sin. I don't know the sin. No. I can only assume. I can assume that the sin was a sin of unbelief. Maybe they didn't believe the Lord Almighty. Or the father was among people that had, when those 10 spies came, and they said, we are not able. Maybe their father was among people who said, we can't go. It's better we think twice. That might be the sin. It's just a speculation. But the most fascinating thing is that the father wasn't a coup plotter. The father was not sabotaging the effort